Hi, my name's Ashley, and I have a story.
So, where did you grow up?
I grew up a couple places. Till about 5, I lived in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And then when I was going into kindergarten, we moved to Glendale, California, and that's where I grew up.
And who did you live with?
I lived with my family, my mom and dad, and my brother.
What kind of child would you say you were?
When I was little, I was a very happy, kind of lost in my own little world. I loved to color and sing, and I definitely was very aware of and attached to God as well. And just basically pretty happy.
And when was the first time you had an interaction with someone that you knew was off or inappropriate?
Yeah, well, we would spend time with families, and there was a particular family that I stayed with. We would stay sometimes for a weekend or a few days at their house. And when I was probably 7, there was an older teenage boy who I was alone. I don't know where everybody was, but I was alone. I think I was tired or taking a nap, and I was in a bedroom. And he walked into the bedroom and pulled down his pants and asked me to basically look at him naked. So that was really shocking for me.
And how old were you?
I was about 7.
And how old was he?
He was probably 15 or so, definitely fully grown, 15, 16, something like that.
How did you respond?
Well, I covered my eyes because I really didn't want to see it. It was very shocking. I'd never been treated that way before. It was the first kind of sexual thing that had ever happened to me, and I was really, really embarrassed, and I felt super awkward and afraid. So I covered my eyes. I said, no, I don't want to look, and he kept insisting, I want you to look, and I want you to touch. And so finally, just to get rid of him, I can't quite remember everything, but probably just to get rid of him, I looked and I touched him. So that was the first interaction I had.
Were you close before then?
No, I was a very shy child, and so I didn't say a whole lot unless I was spoken to. And so, I wouldn't have really talked to him all that much, and I mostly just stayed either by myself or with my mom or my dad. And so he just kind of entered my space, which was really shocking.
Did you tell anybody afterward?
I didn't. I was very embarrassed. And my parents, it was probably a generational thing, I don't know, but I didn't have that type of relationship with my parents where I felt free to share personal things, or I didn't even know how to share about what had happened to me because it was so different in the nature of it. My parents and I had never talked about sexual things before, so I just bottled it up and hid it, and really I just hoped it would never happen again, and never said a word.
Did it ever happen again?
Yes, it did. They moved to a different house. I only remember it happening in that house one time. And then they moved to a different house, and I must have been older at this time because I remember a lot more from that time. My parents were pretty naive, and they had me whenever we'd spend more than a day, we would spend the night there. And they would have me sleep in the same bedroom as all the boys. So my brother, this boy in question, and then his brother, and me. I was the only girl. I was the youngest one. And so it escalated from me looking and touching to when he knew everyone was asleep, he would wake me up and he'd say, "Come here, and let's play a little game, or let's have some fun." And he would have me touch him. He would have me perform oral sex on him. He would touch me. He would stick his finger inside me, and he would touch me, and he pretty much just used me for pleasure every time we went there. And he would always say, "It's our little secret, don't tell anyone." And by this point, I had given into it. I was no longer fighting it. And I had convinced myself that I was enjoying it. But all the while, it was destroying my relationship with my parents. It was creating in me a sense of shame, a sense of guilt, a sense of how dirty I was and how wrong this was. I felt like I was going against everything that I wanted. I just wanted to be an innocent kid. And my innocence was just being robbed of me every time we went to their house. So I think probably what happened is a part of me had to be sacrificed. I had to put aside my innocence in order to enjoy it, and I had to enjoy it in order to maybe not go crazy or be unhappy. And I probably would have rather been at peace than fight this. And I knew I couldn't tell anyone, so maybe it was the only choice I had, was to enjoy it and to gain something from it. And also, I think that as a child, when you're so young, because I was only probably 7 or 8, you need to be close to people. You need intimacy of some sort. And I didn't feel an intimate connection with any of my family. So I think in a way, it fulfilled an intimacy that I needed. And I convinced myself that it was a good thing, probably.
Did you ever tell anybody?
I did. Actually, I didn't know that I was sexually abused. I didn't know what sexual abuse really was until I was close to 30 years old. I had such a hard time forming connections with people. I had such a hard time being a friend, accepting friendship and love. I really had a wall around my heart for a long, long time. And I didn't know why. And it was affecting me in every area of my life. I couldn't date people. I couldn't, I just had I was very lonely, and I felt different for a really long time, the whole time I was growing up. And so finally I was talking to some women at my church, and I was expressing some thoughts that were bothering me. And I said, "Gosh, I can't seem to control my mind. It's just, I don't know what's wrong with me." And I started sharing specifics, because I knew enough of the Bible to know that the more specific I was, the more it would go away. So I started sharing some very specific, very embarrassing, very shameful things that I was very ashamed of at the time. And one of the women said, "You know what? Have you ever gone through any type of sexual abuse?" And I said, "I don't know. What do you mean by that?" And she said, "Has anyone ever touched you inappropriately, or when you were little, did anything ever happen?" And I said, "I think so, yeah. I think I was sexually abused." And so she suggested a book, called The Wounded Heart, and I picked it up and I read it, and I finally saw myself in the pages of this book. And I could finally identify why I would hate people so much, why I had so many problems relating and forming friendships and bonds with people, why I hated myself, why I felt so much shame, why I felt so much bitterness, why my heart was such a mess, basically. I was blown away that I had been sexually abused. I didn't know that. So that's the first time that I started to talk about it.
And for how long was this going on in your life?
Probably for about 2 years. I'm sure the abuser at some point figured out, she's not going to hide this forever, and she's getting older, so I better stop. But it went on for about 2 years. I didn't want it to happen, but then when it did, again, that need for someone loves me, someone sees me, I'm not just the quiet child in the corner who no one really knows, because I just didn't feel like anyone knew me. And so in kind of a twisted way, it met a need, and it probably made me feel good and feel terrible at the same time. So yeah.
What would you have said to yourself if you could talk to yourself?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's okay to talk about it. It's more common than you think. There's no shame in it. It's not your fault. There's help out there. There's healing. There's a whole other world besides darkness and fear and shame, and you can change. You're not stuck in who you are just because you've been through some hard things or some shameful things. You're not stuck, and there's a lot of hope.
What would you say to somebody who questions why God allowed these things?
I sure did. I was really angry for a while because whenever these things happen when you're young, it does steal a chunk of your childhood. There's things that we shouldn't know until we're older, and to know sexual things at such a young age just really fast forwarded a lot of the knowledge that I had about sexuality, but not my maturity. So my knowledge was way ahead, but my maturity was way behind. And intimacy is meant to be a fruit of a mature, right, intimate relationship between two consenting people. And for it to be forced upon you and to be a secret and to be manipulated, it just steals something from you. And so, even though I was mad at God, I worked through it, and He was patient when I was mad at Him, and He let me say everything I needed to say. And then through scripture and through advice and through prayer and through fasting too, I realized that there's so many women out there that have been through this. It's a very high number of women that have been through at least something that has damaged them in this way. And so it's made me more compassionate. It's made me more aware of other people's feelings and what hurts they might have in their life, and what help they might need. I can spot it in people. I can usually tell a fellow kind of, survivor, I guess you'd say, and it makes me want to reach out and say it's okay.
And what's the biggest thing you've learned having gone through this experience?
I've learned a lot of things. I think just because God is with you doesn't mean your life is going to be free of problems and hurts. And therefore, we can't expect that of God. We can't expect that of our life. We have to just embrace, like Paul said, embrace the weaknesses, because they make us who we are, and they make us beautiful. And, I think that the more we have to really overcome, the better we are. And so I'm grateful that I've had to work so hard, and also it's made me really grateful for what I do have, because I've had to work so hard to gain friends or to be a friend. I'm very grateful for my friends, and I hang on to them. And so it's made me hang on to God really tight, and my friends, and the good things that I do have, I'm very grateful for. So if that takes some hardship, then that's okay. I'd rather have it that way.